It's James Harrison. I'm back. Another video series. This is Tip Tuesday. And what I'm going to talk about is a couple of quick tips about tuning. I'm going to do a video somewhere down the road that's going to involve a lot more tuning tips and everything. But along my career or the process of growing through the different types of drumming and stuff that I have, I had a couple of tips that have helped me in situations that were either I couldn't make noise or I was against so much noise I couldn't hear and trying to tune. Now, if I'm sitting at home and I have all the time in the world, I take all the time in the world to tune. I don't do it very quickly. In fact, most of the time when I'm tuning, once I get on finger tight, I don't move more than a half turn at a time. Some people crank. That's just not the way I operate, and that's fine. But I do have a couple of quick tips for you. First, we're going to talk about the batter head. For those of you who don't know, that's the top head. I just have a snare drum I pulled off the shelf here. This is the Yamaha FRP, which is a reinforced fiberglass snare. And I was in a club gig for 17 and a half years, and when I would break a head, I usually had an extra snare. I just throw an extra snare on and set the other one down. And then on the breaks, I would try to change the head. And I had to do that in a fairly quick time because I usually wanted to put the original snare back on every time. So one of the things that I did a lot, and I've got a head down here that I can kind of show you with, even though this is a used head, it's an Ambassador X. Oftentimes what I would do is I would just take and pop the collar like this, all the way around, trying to get the head to stretch out. I've also seen John J.R. Robinson do a thing where he squeezes it like this and tries to get it to pop, just to try to get it to seat quicker. Well, at home, I don't necessarily do that, just to try to get the head pre-stretched out, I guess you'd say. And if you invert it, just tap it, it'll pop back out. So that would be one thing that would help get the head to seat quicker. Another thing I would do is oftentimes the break music for the club I was in, there were subs underneath the stage. It was tremendously loud. And, you know, the club owner and the boss didn't like it if I was smacking on the snare like a sound check or something. So oftentimes I'd be up there trying to find like shade, and you can hear right now that's slower and everything, but with a loud music going on, you can't always hear that. And then also sometimes when you're playing with a stick, you get these overtones. So a couple different things I've done. Sometimes when I'm tuning, I rest my arm or hand on the rim, touch the center of the drum, then tap around trying to get the pitch from the center to that low. But sometimes I needed two hands, so I would take like a muffle of some kind, like a Vader Buzzkill or any type of gel material, and I'd stick it right in the center of the head. And you can see how much it takes away. And then I would just, so you can hear that slower. Another thing that I would do that worked really well for me, when I couldn't hear sometimes, I'm going to pick this up just to demonstrate this. I would grab the drum and I would just hold it like so, like a pizza or something, and I would literally tap the rim, and you can hear that's lower. So then I can bring that up and try to get those pitches to match. So, and then, you know, typically also, you need to go across and do that one too. Still a little bit low. So it works in a thing when I can't make a lot of noise. So it's closer. So it still needs to go up more to match exactly. It's getting closer. So anyway, that's like just a tip. I would go around and tap the drum. And I do have to say that you almost have to turn it as you're doing it, because if I go, I'm moving where the stick hits the drum, so you have to try to hit the same spot. So you see it's still a little bit lower. So that's one way you can do it, just above a tuning line. That's something that helped me out a little bit. Now I'm going to quickly talk about tuning the drum over and talking about the snare head. And the snare side head. A lot of people, it's generically called a snare head, but some people say when you think snare head, they just think a head that goes on the snare. That's a batter head, the top head. This is a snare side head. So to get the snares out of the way, I would often, like a lot of people do, take a stick and stick it under there. If your snares are so tight that when you turn them off, you can't do that, your snares are probably too tight. That frees you up to check the bottom head. When I was young, I would take a drum key and tap that, you know. And along the way, I learned that one time I was changing the bottom head, and I loosened it up, and I saw all these half-moon dents all the way around it, and I realized I was doing that with a drum key. And you have to realize that this particular head is 3 mil thick. This is an ambassador snare side head. A diplomat is 2 mil thick, and an emperor, I believe, is 4. Anyway, what you don't understand what a mil is 1/1000th of an inch thick. Okay, so it would take 1,000 of these to be 1 inch. So that's pretty thin. So you got to be careful hitting it with a stick and everything. So another thing I would do oftentimes is I would take a tiffany mallet. So I wasn't getting these high overtones, you know, that would bother me. But if I couldn't make noise, another thing that I would do sometimes is I would put the drum up again, and I would hold it so I'm just getting one head at a time, and I would just touch it with my finger. Not that. I'm not trying to get the overtone. I'm just touching it. So that one's slower. So that's a good way to check it. And again, if I'm in a club, I would just put my ear right here. And I could hear that without making a lot of noise. So my point is, use a tiffany mallet when you're in a situation where you can make some noise, so you're not going to dent the bottom head. Remember, it's 1/1000th of an inch thick, and this would be 3/1000 inches, however you want to say that. 3/1000th of an inch is the thickness of that. And then, you know, put a stick or anything under there. And you can even, if you don't have that handy, you can hold them up. Sometimes when you do that, you're hearing more than the fundamental pitch. Sometimes when I just touch it, I'm not pressing down, I'm just burying my finger. I can hear that pitch difference where sometimes with that I hear more overtones. And so that's basically that. And sometimes on certain type of gigs, I would leave these on either side of the snare bed a little bit looser sometimes to make sure the snare's touched, because it depends on the type of snare bed that's cut. And again, and I would often do that finger thing on the top. I would just touch. So it's pretty obvious that's lower. That one's low. Okay, and I purposely lowered some of these before the video just so we could do that for the demonstration. So my tip is, if you have the time, put it on, seat it correctly. You could do a star pattern. I never go around when I'm putting the head on, but when I'm just fine-tuning, I sometimes will go around because, again, once I'm fine-tuning, I'm just moving little increments. A lot of times I use a marching type key so I can see better, but another key that I should have brought it here for the video. Remo makes a key that actually has a little rubber, kind of a rubber fitting on top of the key. It actually fits into a cordless screwdriver or cordless drill that works really well. But that's really good for putting it on and finger tightening the thing, because you can do this with your fingers. If you go around and take that and put it on, instead of grabbing the wings that stick out, you just grab the little rotor part and turn. When it gets to a point, you know, you go across and do it evenly. When you can't, it'll let you know, it'll stop moving. You won't be able to turn it. Then you know that you've done a pretty good job of getting it as even as possible. And that's a crucial thing. You don't want to move too large of an increment to start with. So a tiffany mallet works really well to get rid of the overtones, especially when I turn the snares off. You know, again, I could put a muffler in the middle. That's lower. A little easier than doing it that way. I hope you didn't just hear that big rumbling of thunder on the video. So, bottom head, be very, very careful. It's very thin. Don't tune it with hitting it with a key or sometimes even a stick. I like to use a Tiffany mallet or my finger, not a fingernail, the flat part of the finger. You can wipe it off if you feel like that gets oils on it and stuff like that. And then, you know, if I needed to check it and hit it a couple of times, what I would always do is if the break music was playing something, I would just hit my backbeat with whatever was playing so that it wasn't disruptive to the dance floor and everything. That gave me a chance to kind of hear it. Put the mic on, good to go. So that's basically just a quick tip on tuning. You know, the idea is use a timpani mallet to get rid of a lot of the overtones and get more of the fundamental pitch. If you're in a situation where you just can't hit the drum, sometimes you can hit the rim and hear a pitch difference. And then again with the bottom head, use your finger, tap around, make sure you get the snares off. To me, it's always easier to muffle one head at a time. So sometimes if I was in a club, I would just take a towel and stick it underneath the snare drum so it rested between the snare and the stand. So I was tuning one head at a time and not having both heads ring. So there you go. This is a quick tuning tip. Again, there'll be some videos coming up about muffling and tuning in detail, but that's just a quick tip. If you're in that situation where you can't make a lot of noise and you need to do it quickly, there's a couple ways to do it. Thanks.